We're breaking down all the reasons why the Phoenix Suns straight up suck, but this cold open is brought to you by our diehard Psycho Blue, who drops a $4.99 super chat. Says, reason number one, Perk predicted us in the preseason to win it all. The curse of the fat man is undefeated. Psychos and sickos unite for another edition of the PHNX Suns Show. Of course, brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Download the Bet365 app. Use code PHNX365 when you sign up and find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Eric. That's Steven. That's Gerald. Noah behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen. But of course, the most important people, the psychos and sickos in chat. Thank you all for continuing to tune in to this show after the Phoenix Suns were officially eliminated from play-in contention last night with a loss to the Thunder. We've had a couple hours to let it digest. How are we feeling, boys?
It was expected. I think Book said it best when he said it's been a slow bleed out, and it has felt like that since pretty much December, maybe late November, honestly, for this group. I mean, we knew this was coming. Last night just made it official, and now we are kind of going to have to find things to talk about before we turn our attention firmly to the off season. And there's going to need to be a lot of change. And I think there will be in terms of the roster and everything else that comes with this team.
How you feeling, Steven?
I'm great.
I know you are.
I'm sensational. The Suns are not, though.
That's another future reference for you.
The Suns are not, though. Yes, true.
No, the Suns are not sensational at all. Speaking of things that we have to cover, as the NBA season's still going on, guess what? We're still doing Push for the Playoffs, presented by All Pro Shave Concepts, because we got it through the end of the regular season. The play-in is set as far as at least the Suns are not in it, in the 11th seed, the Blazers in the 12th seed. But the West is still really tight. OKC at 1, Rockets at 2, Lakers at 3, Nuggets at 4, Clippers at 5, Grizzlies at 6, Warriors at 7, T-Wolves at 8, Kings at 9, Mavericks at 10. What stands out to you the most, Steven, from where the West stands right now?
Well, the team with the highest payroll not being involved in the
besides the Suns. Besides the Suns.
I would say the Houston Rockets.
Okay.
Much discourse. Lazy discourse, I'll say, about this Houston Rockets team. They can't do this. They won't be able to do that. They don't have player X. All of that talk, and look who's in second place in the Western Conference. And look who's been in the top 3 for probably 90% of the regular season. Those very same Houston Rockets. Do they have a noteworthy name in terms of an offensive engine? Nope. But what do they have? An identity. A head coach that's coaching to a specific style of play, proof of concept over the course of the season, and they have multiple lineup iterations that can uphold those same principles. Whether Şengün's on the court, Steven Adams is on the court, whether they're sharing the court together, Fred VanVleet misses 3 weeks post All-Star break, and they just go like 10-4 in that stretch. Like, this is a team that is not the most wow, they don't have the most shiny things, but they're gritty. And that's as much as anything what translates to the playoff stage in particular. You get to focus on a specific team. If you're able to take things away from them and also score off of that, but also dominate on the boards, 2 things translate to playoff basketball: defense and rebounding. Though they're arguably the best in the league at both of those 2 things.
The Rockets are kind of the blueprint in terms of if you're looking for the Suns to drastically restructure around Devin Booker, what you would hope that they're able to accomplish in terms of hiring a coach that can lay that foundation like you're talking about, Steven, that you can get more athletic, that you can get younger, that you can get more defenders out there. But I'll be 100% honest. Coming into the season, before this year started, they had a good year last year. If you'd have showed me that push for the playoffs graphic and blurred out number 2 and number 11, I would have thought the Suns and the Rockets were swap places. So really impressive season from them. There are a lot of good teams in the West, obviously, but the one thing that stands out to me looking at that, the Suns are tied in record with the Blazers right now, and they are 2 games up on the Spurs, who they have a game with on Friday, and they might rest players. It didn't sound like Book and KD were going to play in that game. They could conceivably fall further than 11th right now, at which point the Rockets are getting even higher odds at a better pick when they get the Suns pick this year. So just something to keep an eye on in these last 2 games. I know it's over for the Suns. We're probably just going to be evaluating young players. But if they lose these 2 last games, there's a conceivable world where they are, 13th in the West?
Well,
sorry to make it worse.
Why are they 13th in the West? We have constructed a tier of all the possible reasons. Honestly, there's probably more, but all the possible reasons the Phoenix Suns straight up suck. And we are going to spend the next hour-ish of time breaking down who is the most at fault and who is the least at fault. So hit that like button. Our like goal is going to be a nice, even 100. Appreciate all of you still tuning in with us, all of you psychos and sickos. Let's go ahead and dive into this tier. I think the most important one, Gerald, and the one that the people are really begging for answers.
Sure.
Our first option on why the Suns suck. Gerald not asking hard enough questions. Where do we think this falls? Does it fall into all your fault? How dare you? Part of the problem, or did nothing wrong? I think it's all your fault.
I think I would agree with that. I just didn't bring it this year, and as a result, the Suns are 35 and 45.
Yeah. Steven, do you agree it's all Gerald's fault for not asking hard enough questions?
I mean, of course, because that's the one thing that would have solved everything. If you just simply asked Mike Budenholzer a little bit tougher questions, Devin Booker, just a little bit, they might have swapped positions with the Houston Rockets like you just got done speaking to. But I appreciate your accountability.
That's for sure.
I will take the blame for this one. I'm sorry, guys. This season was all my fault.
Here.
I mean,
real team guy here.
Breaking news here. It's all Gerald's fault. So this is a very, very easy. It's weird with tiers. You don't usually start with like what's going to be the number one option, but I feel like that we might have found that right off the bat. But there are some other options as well.
That was a layup, though.
That was a layup. What's not a layup is the Suns on offense, because turnovers are our next option. Again, our categories are all your fault, how dare you, part of the problem, and did nothing wrong. They're all in all your fault.
Yeah, I mean, if we're being real. I honestly don't think this issue is as high up as some people would prefer to put it. We've talked about this a lot. The Suns had like quarters or segments or spurts where they would turn it over and it would really kind of doom them for the whole game because they would have such a bad quarter. It was hard to come back from that. But if you look at the overall numbers, they were 15th in the league in turnovers, 20th in opponent points off turnovers. Like those aren't good. You would obviously rather be in the top 10 in both of those categories, but it's not this horrendous thing that doomed them every single game like we saw last year. Like turnovers last year were horrendous. This year they were a recurring problem, but I would probably put them in part of the problem for me.
I definitely think they are part of the problem, but looking at so many other things on this list, I like turnovers doesn't even come to mind at first, even for what really plagued this team.
No, I wouldn't say it was nearly as pressing of an issue as it was last season. If you wanted to throw an asterisk in there, it's the timing of them and the timing of it over the course of a game, but also in succession with one that preceded it. That's really if we're speaking about that. If it was specific to one of those, I would have probably ranked it higher, but I don't think it's as high as it was last season at all.
So we're all good with part of the problem.
Yeah, I think so.
And we can always adjust, and we're going to rank things within the tiers, so we're going to really get into this and make your thoughts known as well.
I will say, though, in terms of percentage of general turnovers that were live ball, they were third with 60.4%. So that's not a pretty number at all if you're talking about trying to contend, yet alone actually make the playoffs. But again, just throwing some numerical context to what we're speaking to.
Well, speaking of numerical context, there's a lot of bad numerical context with our next option. turd quarters. Where do we think turd quarters fall in our 4 categories?
All right. So because I'm a crazy person, I spent about an hour and a half today going through each individual game and doing the math. If you subtracted out the third quarter entirely, how would it have affected the Suns' overall game? Would they have won the game? Because you look at the point differential by quarter, overall, they were outscored by 24 points in the first quarters this year, outscored by 37 in the second quarter, outscored by 28 in the fourth. The third quarter, they were outscored by 154 points. That is a major difference from the other quarters. And yes, they're all negatives. But if you remove third quarters from the equation entirely, the Suns would be 40-40 instead of 35-45. So
and that's
they're still a 500 team. They'd be in the play-in. They wouldn't be a good team. So for me, I'm going to put it in part of the problem because I've going through every single game they played so far out of 80. There were a lot of fourth quarters where they had a third quarter. There were a lot of second quarters, a lot of first quarters. Like it felt like it kept switching. The third was just the most prevalent one. So I'd go part of the problem for me.
Yeah, for me, it's the third quarter wasn't the worst post All-Star break. They were actually like 12th in terms of scoring in third quarters post All-Star break. What hurt for me in terms of them in their game week process was first quarters. How many times did they start off a game and they're down 14, down 12, down 16, down 20? And it's because, like we talked about pregame yesterday, they scored 20 points, 22 points, 24 points, 19 points.
Yeah.
That's a steep mountain to try to climb, especially if we're talking about on a game-to-game basis. They're not limiting shots from their opponents in terms of them getting shots on goal, and they're also not stopping them from actually making the shots that they're taking. And they're also conceding more shots on goal to them as well. If you're not going to take shots away and you're also not making yours to start a game, that's a terrible tone to set, and that makes that mountain you have to climb almost on a game-week basis nearly impossible.
I feel like they might be higher than part of the problem. I think it's going to be hard because so many things are part of the problem that it's like,
Yes.
Can we assign so much blame to one thing? But how many times is it like, man, they had a good first half, right? Maybe they overcame their first quarter problems that they had, or they were able to maintain some sort of lead. And then coming out into the second half, they just fell extremely flat. Or, hey, you fought back a little bit in the second quarter, but you're down. And then you come into the third quarter and you just get decimated and you have no problem. I would put them in how dare you personally, but if both of you are good with part of the problem, I think it goes above turnovers in part of the problem.
So I think if we were talking about just like a bad, horrendous quarter, any quarter, I would put it in how dare you. But I think looking at third quarter specifically, like I said, like I went back through each one, and the net gain, if you would have just eliminated third quarters, was only 5 games. Like that is a big difference. Their point differential would be almost 3 times better than what it is right now if you took out third quarters. But a lot of those games they still would have lost even with the terrible third quarter when I did the math. So that's why I'm not putting it as high.
So are we okay with top of part of the problem, or do we want lower?
I think part of the problem should be part of the problem. I
but
think.
lower than turnovers.
I'm on the borderline for part of the problem and how dare you. It's because first quarters and third quarters are when coaching impact are felt most.
Yeah.
To start a game, to start a half, where your game plan starts a certain way and it might shift or double down. Sorry to bring that back to y'all PTSD, but
double down.
That's where it shines through. The teams that are the best, the Oklahoma City Thunder, Boston Celtics, all of those teams are severe positives to start games and start halves. The Suns were on the opposite side of that spectrum. If we're talking about coaching, that's one indication of it not having the impact that you would desire. So how dare you is honestly something that I'm genuinely considering right now.
We can put it in.
So
how dare you.
we can put it there, and then we can always adjust.
Yeah, we can go back and revisit.
So we have a lot to get through, and we're going to continue to get through it just to keep everybody up to date. In all your fault, it's Gerald not asking hard enough questions.
Right.
And how dare you? It's the third quarters, and in part of the problem, it's the turnovers. We still have so much more, including Matt Ishbia, Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal not playing the rookies, rotations, tough schedule. Everything that you could possibly imagine that ruined the Phoenix Suns, and we're going to tier all of them right after this first break. If you took Phoenix Suns money line on third quarters, you'd probably be down a lot of money this season. But if you did the opposite, you'd be up. And of course, you always have to do your sports betting over at Bet365. You and 90 million of your closest friends are the users for Bet365 worldwide. They live stream almost 800,000 events, have early payout offers across the NBA and the NHL, and they have so much more on a daily basis when it comes to same-game parlays, prop picks, and everything in between. I know me personally, as the best bettor on the show, or at least I'm 2 games away from securing that title, which isn't saying a lot this year. I used a lot of profit boosts with same-game parlays over at Bet365, and right now, new customers at Bet365 can get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use code PHNX365, deposit $10, place a bet for $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins or loses. Bonus bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, you must be 21 plus and physically located in Arizona. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, text NEXT-STEP to 53342, or visit problemgambling.az.gov. I'm not wearing my sunglasses right now, but if you catch me in the summertime here in Arizona, I'm basically wearing my sunglasses all the time, and that's because I love Shady Rays. And I am a psychopath who stands by the fact that when it is 120 degrees outside, I feel a little cooler in more ways than one when I wear my Shady Rays. Independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their sunglasses have durable frames, crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures or indoor adventures if you're like me and these bright lights in the podcasting studio hurt your little retinas like they hurt mine. I mean, I'm not wearing it all the time, but when I am wearing them inside, it's with Shady Rays. Plus, if you don't love your shades, you can exchange them for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Plus, PHNX viewers and listeners, that's you. Go to ShadyRays.com, save 35% off polarized sunglasses with code PHNX. Over 300,000 people have rated Shady Rays 5 stars, so use code PHNX today at ShadyRays.com. Shout out Mark, Rich Dog, Nano Assassin, Sandman, Boom Shakalaka, Corey, Noah, everybody in the chat hanging out with us. We appreciate you so much. Sam says, you guys going loner today, right? Longer today, right? We are lost without you. We're going to go as long as this tier takes. So let's dive right back into it. We have Gerald not asking the tough questions up top. We have turd quarters and how dare you. We have turnovers and part of the problem. Up next, Devin Booker. I'm interested in how we're going to decipher this one.
Look, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to have a hard time putting anything in did nothing wrong. I think every single person involved had something they could have done better this season and contributed to the outright failure, the most disappointing season we've ever seen in Suns franchise history. I do think there's been a little bit more of an emphasis on Book, and that comes with the territory of being the face of the franchise, one of the leaders of the team. I do think some of his struggles this season have been overblown. I don't think it was his best season by far, but 25.7 points and 7.1 assists. He ranked 9th and 10th in scoring and assists. And only him, Jokic, Jalen Brunson, and Cade Cunningham were players that were in the top 10 for both scoring and assists this season. Like, yes, his field goal percentage dropped. His 3-point percentage was the second lowest of his career while taking a career high in attempts. Those things hurt his efficiency, but he still had the 4th highest true shooting percentage of his 10 NBA seasons. So it's not all terrible. I do think the defense was one of the biggest things that was a drawback to his season. And you just can't have a 35-win season as the leader of a team and not take accountability for some of that. So I would put him somewhere in part of the problem for sure.
He was definitely part of the problem. Spent a lot of time post All-Star break talking about his drive numbers, talking about the assists, the points created off assists, the 3-point shots created off of his assists as well. All of that done and not having the most conducive process to a superstar. You know he's getting double teamed, so just come down court and just say, go at it. Instead of mixing in a little bit of nuance to your offense to help either make those rotations a little bit behind schedule before they can get to him, or just kind of give him enough Teflon to where he doesn't have to worry about that. We didn't see that nearly enough, yet he still went and had one of his better seasons of his career offensively, especially as a primary ball handler and majority initiator of the offense. That being said, though, the defense has to be better. Non-negotiable. Has to be better.
I agree. We've said a lot about Devin Booker and what he could do better, but he's not blind to the fact that he could also be better. This is what he had to say after last night's game as far as evaluating this season, what he can do better next.
I don't think I shot the ball well this year. Just win games, at all costs, try and empower my will on, on the other team and, my teammates at the same time. Being a leader, using my voice more. Yeah, pretty much everything when you fall this short.
Not to nitpick, but I do wish he had brought up the defensive thing, because I think he disagrees with the idea that he's not been good enough defensively these last couple seasons, because every time I've asked him about defense, he's gotten very short and kind of been like, I've been doing that. I've been playing defense. I don't think in his head he thinks that he's playing bad defense, and I think that is a problem for me. But he touched on pretty much everything else, trying to impose his will a little bit more on the game, not shooting the ball as well as he needed to, being more vocal, even though he has taken steps in that regard. I think these are all areas where he can improve, and I hope that this is the type of season. It should have been last season as well, getting swept in the first round, but I hope this is the type of season that kind of relights that fire again heading into next year.
Yeah, and I do think the defensive end, I agree he needs to be better individually. You also have to think like personnel around him, defensive scheme and everything. I think Devin Booker really thrives when he feels comfortable with who's around him on the defensive end, and I don't think he felt comfortable in a lot of different ways this season. That being said, you're the superstar. You bear the blame. Let's put him in part of the problem. Let's put him below turnovers for now, but we can, of course, always adjust. We did get a super chat from R. Jonesy, 199, says, the blame is in order of the thumbnail, left to right, and that would be Matt Ishbia, Bradley Beal, and Mike Budenholzer. We are going to get to all three of those. Don't you worry about that. And let's start with something that Mike Budenholzer was in charge of. That was the overall rotations. Now, I will say we have not playing the rookies as a completely separate entity. We have offensive scheme as a completely separate entity. So, purely from a rotational standpoint, how much do we think that played a factor into the Phoenix Suns' lack of success?
I mean, I think it's in how dare you for me. I do think to some degree, especially later in the season, it felt like just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. Like nothing he was going to do with the lineups or the rotations was going to truly alter the course of this season. But I do feel like there were a lot of segments of this season where you're wondering, okay, why is that guy playing? Or what happened to this guy?
Do you know how many starting lineups we had this year besides just like injuries?
A lot.
Like
and
a lot.
A lot more than you would think. For like they dealt with some injuries, of course, but not to the extent that they should have been changing up not just their starting lineup, but the rotations behind it on top of that. It prevented a lot of guys from ever developing a rhythm or a cohesion with their fellow players that they were sharing the court with. We had been saying that they needed to bench Tyus for a while before they finally did it. We had been saying we want to see the rookies. I know that's a separate thing. We had been saying
less Mason
Plumlee. We were asking what happened to Monte Morris when he came in and played well early in the season and then was just kind of out of the rotation for the rest of the year. It was a lot of different kind of head scratching rotation moves all season long.
It's how dare you, but I'm definitely considering all your fault too.
Okay.
Because if you don't start the season with Tyus Jones at your starting point guard spot, how much does that shift the issues that you saw defensively in the starting lineup? How much does that shift the way Devin Booker started the season offensively? Like there's trickle-down effect, domino effect from one decision being made and how it kind of played out over the course of the season. If you shift things early on, maybe you are proactive in figuring out a weakness, or you just never have to worry about it at all because you never put yourself in that situation. Like, just think about the template for their starting lineup. You have Tyus Jones at the 1, Jusuf Nurkic at the 5. What do you think teams are going to do to you defensively? Poke at him in isolation, poke at him in isolation. And if we're not a heavy ISO team, guess what we can always bank on? Bringing them in pick and roll and knowing that they're going to give up something. And if it doesn't come directly from those two defending, it's going to come from someone else having to compensate for them not being able to execute in coverage defensively. And that's what we saw time and time and time again. I won't necessarily say they should have came into the season starting Ryan Dunn. I wouldn't have been opposed to it, though, especially because you lauded him for his defensive abilities and you had no one else that could replicate what he brings to the rotation.
So let's lump some of these together then, because Mark says, is that a rotation problem or a roster problem, though? I'm okay with putting rotations in all your fault. I'm okay with putting almost everything coaching rise in all your fault. We don't have just a Mike Budenholzer option because there were too many things to pick from that we had to decipher it. But roster fit is also something that we have on this list. How much of it falls to roster fit? How much of it falls to rotations? Or is it just, you know what? Both of you, it's all your fault.
They kind of go hand in hand, unfortunately. And I do think the rotations were very mismanaged at times this year. I also think that they had way too many guards and not enough size and not enough defense. And these are things we talked about coming into the season. We knew that the center spot could be an issue. We knew that Jusuf Nurkic could be a problem. We knew that having an undersized point guard in the starting lineup because you promised him a starting job could be a problem. These are all roster fit issues. And we knew just the underlying, okay, what's Bradley Beal's role going to be this year? Because last year it was fluctuating all over the place. The big three still had a very positive net rating. This year we saw you throw a point guard into the equation on top of that. Bradley Beal's role was all over the place. You combine that with the injuries, with the lackluster effort, with probably being disenfranchised from the whole thing once he got benched. You saw the end result. It was not pretty. And that doesn't absolve Bradley Beal of blame for how he conducted himself over these last couple of weeks. But going back to the underlying issue, it is rosters fit. You didn't have defensive centers. You didn't have enough wings outside of Kevin Durant and Ryan Dunn who could actually defend their position. You had a lot of 3-guard lineups. That's just not going to cut it in this NBA.
I think, yeah, they go hand in hand. I don't think the roster was great, but I also think Mike Budenholzer pushed the right buttons to get the most out of a poorly constructed roster. Why do we just throw both of those into all your fault?
Okay.
Let's throw roster fit and rotations both into all your fault. Of course, behind Gerald not asking hard enough questions.
Sure. Yes.
Roster fit's the third one there. So just to give people an update on where our tier stands as of right now, of course, at the top of the list, and it's going to stay there. Gerald not asking hard enough questions at the top of all your fault, then rotations and roster fit. And how dare you, the lone how dare you option, it's third quarters. And part of the problem, we have turnovers and Devin Booker. Before we continue, I'd like to read a couple of our super chats from our wonderful psychos and sickos who have tuned in with us so far today. Let's start with Maria. $4.99 from Maria says, I'm back. Let's go. Now that the season is basically over, do you sit Book and Beal for the remainder of the games and adjust lineups to examine who you want to keep?
Yeah, I think Book is done for the season. I would be surprised if he plays. Beal, probably the same thing. It did not sound like when I asked Coach Bud about KD and the other guys possibly being sat, asking Book about it. He even mentioned possibly giving the younger guys a chance to grow and develop. So I'd be surprised if they play in the next 2 games.
I would be surprised if they play as well. I think this is definitely a time that you get to learn more about your younger pieces. You shouldn't be learning too much new that you didn't already know prior to now, but they also didn't play for 2.5 months. So any time that you can find where there's actual game reps to be had, give them 35, 37, 38 minutes.
I'm ready for Ryan Dunn heliocentric offense, baby. David with a $1.99 super chat. Thanks, David. Says Katie, Book, Beal, O'Neal, and Allen to close too often.
Oof.
Yeah. Maria with another $4.99 super chat says, also, can Ishbia now start with making front office and coaching changes versus waiting for official end of the season? Thank you for still covering this train wreck of a team. Thank you for still listening to our coverage of this train wreck of a team.
Facts.
I mean, anything's possible at this stage with how bad it's been, but I do think they wait until the end of the season just because we saw last year, Ishbia came in to the Suns practice facility. He was asking players their thoughts. He wanted to get input before making the decision about Frank Vogel's future. I'd imagine they probably do the same thing this time around, but you never know. The writing has kind of been on the wall. I'd be surprised again if Mike Budenholzer is coaching this team again next year.
Well, considering we've seen other Western Conference teams not be waiting for the end of their season, especially considering that both teams have at least a month left in their season, if not more, to see them be preemptive with their decisions, I'm not mad at anyone that is desiring to see haste from the Suns front office.
Flam with a $5 super chat says, it's all Ishbia and Josh Bartlestein's fault. Every decision made since they got here were originally sold to us as a win now move, and we did not, in fact, win now. Well, Ishbia is on the list. The front office is on the list, and we're going to keep breaking all of this down. Who's really at fault? We're playing the blame game, and we're going to continue to do it on the other side of this break. Now that the season is almost over, it's time for you to focus on resting, relaxing, taking care of your body, your blood pressure, whatever really just grinds your gears. And cornbread gummies are perfect for you, whether you're looking for THC, CBD, or a combination of the two. Cornbread is here to just make your life better. A healthier way to relieve aches and pains while getting a better night's sleep, which are all things that I struggle with, and cornbread has helped me tremendously. They're full spectrum, USDA certified organic, made from flour only, third-party lab tested for potency, terpenes, and contaminants, vegan, dairy-free, and gluten-free. They are the whole shebang and so much more. Plus, they offer free shipping and backs all products with their 30-day Better Life guarantee, and they have a 2-minute quiz on their website that you could take to get the best personalized recommendation for the gummy that you need. If you want to give Cornbread a try, they're offering you 30% off your first order. Just visit cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX. Use promo code PHNX at checkout. One more time, that's cornbreadhemp.com/PHNX. Use code PHNX for 30% off your first order. And of course, I had to stop at Circle K today because I got 40 cents off per gallon. And I didn't have to do anything to earn it except for be a part of the inner circle. And that is FREE, baby. It's for me because I did not have to do anything except for download the Circle K app, put in my phone number, put in my email. And not only was I saving 25 cents off per gallon on my first 5 fill-ups, then 3 cents off per gallon every day after that, but going forward, there are other days where you can get massive deals, like today until 11:59 p.m. and then also April 24th from 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Inner Circle members can get 40 cents off per gallon. I'm going to say that one more time. 40 cents off per gallon. Plus, you get a bunch of deals on their snacks and drinks. Join the Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for more details. Let's dive headfirst back into this tier. Mark, we'll get to your super chat in a second. We appreciate you very much, but we got a lot of work to do on this tier. Speaking of Matt Ishbia, let's talk about where he falls in the blame game.
I do think, all right, I'm going to say that I think a lot of the blame towards Matt Ishbia has been blown out of proportion. And do we have a separate one for front office, or are we lumping them together?
So front office is roster construction and depth. So that's kind of, so that like the same way that we don't have Mike Budenholzer on here, we have the things that they did.
Oh, okay.
Front office, I guess we probably should have added like trades or like previous front office moves.
All right, Ishbia specifically, I've reported this, ESPN has reported this in regards to the KD trade, in regards to the Bradley Beal trade. Like, Ishbia is the one empowering Josh Bartlestein and James Jones to make moves, and obviously his aggressive mindset lays the foundation for what these guys are going to submit to him. So he's definitely at least part of the problem. I do think there's a misconception that he is the one going out and negotiating these trades, or he is the one going out and coming up with these ideas. He is being presented ideas, and he is approving them because he's an aggressive owner who wants to spend, who wants to win now. And again, I think that brash mentality has gotten the Suns in this position. So I do think he's either at the top of part of the problem or in how dare you. But I do think that has been a little blown out of proportion. I think he needs to restructure the front office this summer to people that are going to be a little bit more patient and be a little bit more prudent and kind of save him from those impulses that, like, we need to win now. It's got to be now. Like, forget about the future. But he's also kind of the owner, and that's going to happen no matter who he hires as long as he continues to pursue that track. So that is a potential problem, but I also think that having an owner that is involved, that wants to spend, is not a bad thing in and of itself. They just need a front office that can protect them from some of these impulses like the Bradley Beal trade that wound up backfiring in a spectacular way. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know if your guys' perception is a little bit different, because I know a lot of people think that Matt Ishbia is just, a battering ram trying to barge down the door.
What do you think, Steven?
I think if you believe an owner is going to come in and trump the decisions of the people he's appointed to make basketball decisions, I don't think you're looking at the role of each person in the front office the right way. He's done nothing wrong. I know that might be controversial. I know that might be a hot topic, whatever. He's done nothing wrong, because all of you all wanted a team that's going to be winning now, and for an owner to match that, and for an owner to not have the cases, et cetera, for the person that preceded Matt Ishbia.
Yeah.
He hasn't had any of those problems. He's been very positive. He's changed some of the culture. The culture doesn't shift in 1 or 2 or 3 seasons. It takes a ton of time, sometimes decades, to undo the wrongs that preceded you, which is what he's up to right now. But he's put people in positions to be as successful as they desire to be. He's had no problem spending money. He's quite literally said he doesn't care about spending money. That's never an issue. So if that's what you're looking at from an owner, he's given that and then some. The execution from the pieces independent of him are where shortcomings have come from.
Yeah, if you want to talk about, hey, he's maybe empowered the wrong people, you could put that at his fault. If you want to say setting the expectations for this team and going out and saying such brash things as if 26 other teams would trade spots with us and we're going to compete and win every year. But Matt Ishbia also made Suns games more accessible to people, which maybe some people don't want to see them anymore, but he still did that, and that's still a good thing for him. I think he deserves some of the blame, for sure. I would put him at very end of part of the problem.
Okay.
Just because the overall mindset, I will always say this, I want my owner to spend money. I want my owner to try and win. But I also need my owner to know when to make the right moves and who to have making those right moves. So I would put him at the end of part of the problem, but I agree with you, Gerald. I think it's been blown out of proportion. The harm that he has done specifically to this franchise.
But I'll say, as a question, is it him that's pushing deals across the finish line, though? Because how can you...
It's hard to shake that when you come in and then the KD trade happens.
So
like
I wrote about this a couple weeks ago,
There you go,
and I went back and read the reporting from Brian Windhorst, Ramona Shelburne over at ESPN, both in regards to the KD trade and the Bradley Beal trade. And he played an active role in recruiting Bradley Beal once they had set the meeting, which is something that most owners don't do. And obviously the Bradley Beal move turned out to be a very bad one. But he was not the one who came up with the Bradley Beal idea. And he was not the one pushing James Jones or Josh Bartlestein to get that done. The KD trade, he did play an active role in pushing that across the finish line. But the groundwork had already been laid by James Jones before Matt Ishbia was even named as owner. Because remember, the prior summer, KD wanting to go to the Suns was a well-reported thing. I think it was Shams that had already reported that KD wanted to be on the Suns. They couldn't figure out a trade at that point. They had the groundwork. The Nets were the ones that laid out, it's got to be Mikal Bridges. It's got to be Cam Johnson. It's got to be 4 first-round picks plus another pick swap. Like, those things were already set in stone. It was based on the reporting from ESPN, Ishbia saying when they asked for Jay Crowder on top of all that he was saying, yeah, throw him in because he hasn't been with the team all season. He hasn't played a single game. So, yeah, throw him in. That was the part that he pushed across the finish line based on the ESPN reporting. Whether you want to believe it or not, that's totally up to you. I'm not going to try and convince anybody because I know people have very strong opinions about this. And I do think that Matt Ishbia is going to push behind the scenes more than is going to be reported at times. But at the same time, like, I think he's part of the problem.
Yeah, sure.
That's as high as I'm
not
probably
blameless.
going to go.
And that is my particular reasoning. The only direct example that we all were able to look at and not really have a bias or opinion to, because it was a matter of fact, was in the war room for this previous draft where they got Ryan Dunn and Osu Iguodala. We're literally watching the channels of communication that have taken place between head coach Mike Budenholzer, Josh Bartlestein, and Matt Ishbia. They're asking James Jones. They're asking Matt Ishbia questions, And he's saying, I'm here to just push it across the finish line, but it's your job to do the evaluation as far as, do you believe in this? Do you believe in this, Mike? Do you believe in this, James? Do you believe in this, Josh? If you all believe in this, here we go. I'm with it. I'm all in. I trust you guys. You guys are in these positions for a reason.
Yeah.
Yep.
So for those reasons, I can't say he's part of the problem.
Well, I think end of part of the problem is okay. I think that's going to kind of satisfy both sides here. Like you said, Gerald, I don't know if there are many people that are blameless. Maybe the next person we talk about is one of those. Where does Jimmy Butler fall? So we'll put Ishbia in at part of the problem at the very end. And then let's talk about Jimmy buckets.
So are we saying the Jimmy, like missing out on Jimmy Butler?
Just the whole Jimmy Butler everything.
I think missing out on the Jimmy Butler trade, I would put in part of the problem. Jimmy Butler himself, his existence, he was just existing. I do think...
It's just, I put it in here to be funny, to be honest with you.
I think missing out on the Jimmy Butler trade, like we saw what he's been able to do for the Warriors and how he's been able to turn their season around. Maybe they don't win a playoff series. Maybe they don't go very far into the postseason, but... I mean, I guess did nothing wrong if we're just doing it as
let's
a
just
joke,
we could throw Jimmy Butler and didn't do anything wrong. I just thought it was funny. There's another person in here who I threw in here just to be funny.
aside from me.
No, that was dead. What are you talking about?
That's fair.
You thought that was a joke?
You're right.
Yeah.
My bad.
What happened to this accountability that we were proud of you for? All right, here's one that I'm ready to throw into all your fault. Above rotations, above roster fit. Not playing the rookies. Agree or disagree?
I would put it after roster fit. I do think that was kind of the point in the season where things derailed. I think it goes hand in hand with rotations, and obviously it's the big glaring example that we point to, because when the rookies played to that point in the year, the Suns had a borderline top 10 defense. At least they were top half of the league, which is all you need to be with the offense that you had. I think they were 12th in offensive rating. But as soon as they took them out, they plummeted to like bottom 5 defense, which is where they've been on the season ever since then. And I think those moves, phasing, Oso out of the rotation, bringing Ryan Dunn out of the rotation when he's one of the few people in that starting lineup who was giving a damn and making multiple efforts on the defensive end, I don't think there was any coming back from that. And I think that might have been the point where Bud kind of lost the locker room this season, to be honest with you, because we saw Kevin Durant. We heard people saying on the sidelines, he was saying, play somebody who can defend or something like that. That's Ryan Dunn, and Ryan Dunn wasn't playing. So I do think that contributed to kind of the lack of faith that the Suns had in the locker room, because you heard KD, you heard Book, you heard all the vets go to bat for these guys about how pivotal they were and how much they were helping. And then for them to just be out of the rotation, that kind of frays your trust in what the guy up top is doing.
It should go in all your fault.
Yeah.
And that's because of, we talked about it even before the season started, about what this team's ceiling could be defensively and how much those two would factor into that. Certainly Ryan Dunn, and in some capacity also Iguodala. Within 2 weeks of the regular season, we grew to understand that their value exceeded even what we initially thought they would in terms of their defensive impact and the value that it brings for the team. They needed them. They were not there when they needed them. And then suddenly they come back to the rotation, and it's all of a sudden like a breath of fresh air when you could have had this as a mainstay in your rotation to help to bridge the gap for a majority of the season.
Yeah, Maria with a $1.99 super chat. Thanks, Maria, says, I'll never forgive Bud for benching the Rooks. Let's knock out a couple more of these super chats here. We have Mark saying Bud may not have maximized what he had, but the front office gave him none of the hallmarks of his system: stretch 5, rim protection, and elite point of attack defense.
Those are fair points. I do also think as a coach, you have to be able to adapt your system to your roster and not the other way around. And the reality is not every coach is going to be good at that. And I don't know that Bud, I mean, we've seen the proof that he's not good at that. But they did have an elite point of attack defender in their rookie, and Bud benched him for a month or two. The rim protection, valid point, stretch 5.
Hey, Jusuf Nurkic shot threes for a little bit.
He was shooting threes all summer. Remember that? Remember when yeah.
And then he got mad because somebody asked him to stop shooting threes.
And I also say that one way to mitigate not having an elite point of attack defense is to be able to switch. So in addition to one rookie that gives you that point of attack defense that you need, you also have another one that helps you navigate your weaknesses, and you did not play either one of those two to the extent that they should.
Flam with another super chat. Thanks, Flam. Says, Ishbia is the owner. He hired the CEO. He is responsible. I understand that line of thinking, and I do think that he does bear some of the responsibility. We have a lot more blame game to play, and we're going to play it right after our final break. All Pro Shade Concepts, it is their time to shine because it's getting really hot outside. Almost triple digits today. I think 96, 97, but it would have been 76, 77 in your backyard if you customize your outdoor living space with a custom fit awning with All Pro Shade Concepts, because their hundreds of designs and colors can match whatever your HOA needs and satisfies your need to be outside during the summer. These roll down patio shades can keep your patio up to 20 degrees cooler during the summer, and it can even keep it warmer during the winter, keeping the warm air in and the cold air out. At the end of the day, the moral of the story is you can be outside for more time in this beautiful state because of All Pro Shade Concepts. Plus, the most trusted local shade company. Better Business Bureau rated them A+, voted #1 by Ranking Arizona for patio shades in 2024, and 1,000 5-star reviews on Google. Call 623-204-1476 or visit allproshadeconcepts.com right now to schedule your free estimate. Plus, write down this number if eventually you want to own a house so that you can get a roll down patio shade. That's 480-776-5231. One more time, 480-776-5231. That is the number for the Carol Royse Team. And if you are looking to buy a home, right now is the time. And if you're young and you think you don't have enough money or you don't have the right game plan, Carol's going to do this for you. She's going to sit down. She's going to talk you through what type of money you need to put together, what type of plan you can put together, if you could take advantage of the first-time home buyer's loan that they have here in Arizona. And she's going to be straight up and honest with you, even if it doesn't make her a single dollar, because that's exactly what the Carol Royse Team does for you. She will be honest with you. And if you're ready to find your dream home, take the next step. Call Carol Royse at 480-776-5231 or visit Carol online at carolroyseteam.com and tell them PHNX sent you. That's carolroyseteam.com. Terms and conditions do apply. We ready to keep on rolling here, boys?
Let's do it.
Let's keep on playing a little blame game. By the way, I did add, I had Noah add a square during this of front office moves. So we will get to that at the very end so that we can maybe properly put some more blame. But just to give people a rundown of what we have so far in our tier, in the all your fault category, we have Gerald not asking hard enough questions at the top, rotations, roster fit, not playing rooks in that order, going down to how dare you. We have the turd quarters. Part of the problem is turnovers, Devin Booker and Matt Ishbia, and did nothing wrong is Jimmy Buckets. So let's get to another player who's not on the Suns right now. Somebody who the script writers were really doing a favor last night. Had himself quite a game for the Charlotte Hornets.
He did.
Jusuf Nurkic. Steven, I'm curious your opinion on where Jusuf Nurkic falls on this.
He was part of the problem, but he should be on the higher end of the spectrum in terms of part of the problem. Obviously, him not being able to execute to the standards that this iteration of the roster needed is on him. But there was also another roster shift that took place while he was at the center position for this team, to where his demands now, what gave him value offensively last season, now it was not needed. So instead of him being able to make plays out of the high post, play on pop 5 actions and going to backdoor cuts and dribble handoffs, that wasn't needed because they have another playmaker, and this time it's in the form of a point guard and Tyus Jones. So now his role shifts, the context of the roster shifts, and now he's caught in limbo. So now there's more of a precedence on his defense because he has another player that can't guard, that's putting him in compromise. And everybody's pointing the finger at him in drop coverage when he's where he's supposed to be, because the person that's guarding the ball is constantly getting clipped and dying on screens, if not just getting blown by. So I can't put him in the all your fault tier. Also can't put him in how dare you for the on-the-court stuff. So I'm putting him as part of the problem.
I'm going to go lower end of how dare you for me. I think last year the Suns were 13 points per 100 possessions better when Nurk was on the court. And this year they were like 6.5 points worse when he was on the court. Like him going from being being serviceable to being borderline unplayable. And I know there are other factors like Steven talked to that contributed to that. But we knew as soon as the DeAndre Ayton trade happened, we knew that the Suns were taking on a worse center and they were hoping for a better positional fit. If you're just looking at the center part of the equation, we don't even have to bring up how losing Tamani was an awful move. We don't have to bring up how Grayson has been a useful role player. But just looking at the centers, we knew they were getting the worst player out of that exchange. And he was as bad as his worst critics thought he was last year, this year. And it made it to the point where they had to go a different direction at center, where they had to trade Josh Okogie and some second-round picks to get Nick Richards. And we saw that Nick Richards is not even a starting caliber center. So for me, Nurk has to be either at the top of part of the problem or at the bottom end of how dare you, because him being as bad as he was a real issue.
Yeah, I think how dare you is where I'm falling, just because third quarters look so lonely there. But B, it was like the snowball effect for this season that started an avalanche where Jusuf Nurkic shooting threes, he might be unlocked. Like, he doesn't have to do as much in the offense. We don't have to ask him to be point Nurk. This is going to be the system that maybe Mike Budenholzer can get the most out of him. And then also his attitude, the quotes post game, the fact that you had to give up an asset to get rid of him. Not great. Not great. I'm going to put him at the end of how dare you, but definitely at the end. I think there will be a couple of things that jump him in how dare you. But that's where I would feel comfortable putting him. So let's keep it rolling. Past Jusuf Nurkic, I'm interested to also hear your guys' take on injuries and where they fall to blame.
They're part of the problem, but
how much though?
They're lower end. I do think if you look at it like the big three this year, they played fewer games, they played fewer minutes than last year, and we said last year they needed to play more together. So I think it's part of it, but there were so many. It doesn't
feel like they played less though.
It doesn't, but they technically did. I think a couple of KD absences really were the difference this year, and Beal somehow played a similar amount of games as last year, which it doesn't feel like either. But I would say part of the problem.
Did nothing wrong for me. And it's because every team goes through it. Every team has it in different spades. Yep. It's a roll of the dice every season. Every team comes into the season anticipating that being part of their 82-game process. The good teams figure it out. The bad teams wither from it. And not going to say use it as an excuse, because I don't feel like the Suns have used it as an excuse, but it becomes something that they clearly just can't overcome.
Yeah.
And that ties in with some of the things that we put in all your fault.
Yeah, I actually would agree more on did nothing wrong. That stat on them playing less minutes is actually a little shocking to me, because it doesn't feel like that. And if you tell the story, like if you're going back 10 years from now, or you're going to write that book that Espo said you need to write about this season.
Right.
Injuries would come up when talking about Bradley Beal or the fact that KD missed all NBA, right? But I don't look back at the season and go, you know what? If only they were healthy.
No, but it's not blameless. I can't put it in did nothing wrong, because you got fewer games out of your three players who are making $150 million. Like, we can talk about how you need to have a system, you need to have depth to overcome those types of things, how every team deals with injuries. But this particular team was built top heavy. Like, we knew last year, we knew this year, if those three are not on the court and playing well together, this team is not going to succeed. So the fact that Beal missed another 28 games or whatever it's going to be, the fact that KD on top of that's probably going to wind up missing like 20 games, that does matter, even if it's nowhere near as important as some of these other things.
Are we okay with end of part of the problem then, below Ishbia?
Yeah, that's where I would put it.
Cool.
That's cool.
Injuries at the end of part of the problem. Now let's go to depth. So we have roster fit, but now we have depth. I know they kind of go hand in hand. How do we feel those two things are separated though? Or we could just leave it off if we feel like it overlaps with roster fit.
I would probably go part of the problem on this one. I think we hammered home the roster fit aspect of it, but I do think that there were options on this bench that were not tapped into as well as they should have been this season.
I would say part of the problem as well.
Okay. Above injuries or below injuries? Or where in that part of the problem?
I'd probably go below injuries, honestly.
Okay, we'll go end of part of the problem for depth. Here's a big one, and this is one that I feel like it's got to go in at least the top two. Wondering where you guys would put it. Chemistry. or vibes.
Chemistry or vibes?
The modern day equivalent to
probably
chemistry.
in How Dare You. I think the body language thing is a little bit overblown. Katie's talked about this. Like, yeah, if we're losing, we're not going to be out here, high-fiving each other and the vibes are going to be positive. And I never got this. This is the weirdest thing about the season. I never got the sense that these guys don't like each other. Like I've been in locker rooms where you could tell like these guys effing hate each other.
Name names. No,
Never,
I'm kidding,
never
Gerald.
got that sense from this group. I just don't think the pieces fit together. And if that's what you're talking about in terms of chemistry, then sure, probably higher. But if in terms of actual, vibes and whether they liked each other and stuff, it wasn't that high on the list for me.
Mm-hmm. I asked for clarity as far as what lens are we looking at chemistry through for that.
We can define the lens ourselves.
So what do you think, Gerald? Should we lend it to how they got along or what we saw on the court?
Let's go with on the court. And on the court, I would put it in How Dare You, because
let's put it above Jusuf.
Yeah, because this team just did not gel together, and it wasn't because they didn't like each other. They just did not play well together.
And that's exactly why I asked, because solid portion of the turnovers that we saw, especially the timely ones that snowballed into one another across multiple possessions, lack of chemistry, not being on the same page, not seeing things the same way, even in sets and actions that you practice, yet alone on top of the random play that your head coach loved. Defensively, lack of communication, behind schedule, not knowing where guys are supposed to be. All of those things snowball. I feel like that's why they are on the outside of the play-in and the playoffs the way that they're looking right now.
Yeah, I'm good with above Jusuf Nurkic, below third quarters, and How Dare You on court chemistry. This next one, I'm going to tell you, I think it's did nothing wrong.
Okay.
Tough schedule.
Yeah.
How many times we say the Phoenix Suns played themselves, it didn't even matter who they were playing.
Right. They had a tough remaining schedule after the All-Star break, but there were so many times during the season, to your point, where they lost to the Hornets or they lost to they didn't take advantage of the easy portion of their schedule either. So
and did nothing wrong.
Your schedule got
below
harder.
Jimmy Butler.
Your schedule got harder because you did not handle your business. So the schedule had nothing to do with it.
Jimmy Butler hurt the Suns more than the schedule this year. Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So now we have two things: defensive effort and offensive scheme. So let's go with defensive effort. I would define this as lack of closeouts, right? Like lack of getting back in transition. I know the Suns were pretty poor in transition this year as well, right? Where'd you put defensive effort?
All your fault.
All your fault?
Look, they are the 27th ranked defense in the NBA. There are only 3 defenses in the entire NBA that are worse than the Phoenix Suns. And we can talk about scheme. Like, I think scheme is part of it. I think personnel and who's actually on the court is part of it. Like, these 3-guard lineups, you're not going to get many stops with those. But the defensive effort fell apart as soon as the losses started piling up, and they just made each other that much worse. Like, defensive effort for me is one of the biggest things that went wrong this season. Just defense in general. It was awful.
Yeah, I'm good with all your fault. Where are you good with all your fault, Steven? Where in all your fault we have Gerald not asking hard questions, which will not be dethroned, rotations, roster fit, and not playing the rooks.
It should go above rotations.
Okay, so second. So we have basically the second biggest thing that doomed the Suns this season behind Gerald.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm totally with that. I have no other things to say on that because you both summed it up perfectly. What about offensive scheme? This was a good offensive team, but frustrating at times. Where would that fall for you guys?
Part of the problem somewhere, the offense was not the problem for me. There were so many times where at halftime, I think Kellen got in the habit of tweeting this, like, Suns are shooting 59% and lead by 3. Suns are shooting 65% and trail by 2. Like, it was the defense. The offense, there were definitely things that could have been better. This team had the personnel to be a lot better than 12th in offensive rating in the league, but they're still a borderline top 10 offensive team. It's part of the problem for me.
Okay, before we get Steven's thoughts on the offense and we officially put them in the ranking, I want to remind everybody that the party always continues over at gophnx.com. And that means, for those of you not watching us on TV, it's time for overtime, baby. Woo! We're past the hour part. Let's get to some OT. which, by the way, also on gophnx.com. Want to remind everybody that you can sign up for the Green Jacket Open on Saturday, where you can come play as a single or as a foursome. Some of the best and all of the greatest personalities here at PHNX will be there. You can win a 2-year prepaid lease for an F-150 on the Sanderson Ford Hole-in-One Challenge. Of course, our friend Coach Shark Holmes also sponsoring a whole pregame Masters watch party, giveaways, and so much more, plus 16 holes of golf all over at Dobson Ranch Golf Course. Sign up for the Green Jacket Open over at gophnx.com/events. Steven, where does offensive scheme fall for you?
This one is tough for me because how much is it what Bud wanted them to do? How much is it a lack of execution? How much of it is both? How much of it are individual players maybe making decisions that maybe aren't the best, and if they're not hitting on efficiency, it's a lot louder. Like there's so much that's coming to my mind with this team offensively. The way the ball moved when they got 31 or more assists, they had like a top 3 win percentage in those games. When they shot and made their 3-point attempts that they generate, they had a top 4, top 5 win percentage. A lot of times the assists and the threes went in tandem with one another. The assists were a barometer for how many threes they made and the impact that had over games. But they lost the plot on offense. The offense that we heard about in preseason that they were looking forward to pushing the pace after makes and misses, getting into the shot clock with 22 seconds, half court with 22 seconds left on the shot clock, getting the ball to the second side, sometimes to the third side before actually getting into actions, getting into multiple pick and rolls if you're not moving it from side to side. How many times did we see them get through those things post All-Star break? And that's just one window of the actual season as a whole. So how dare you is it for me, because if you allowed your offense to be the side of the ball that you are most akin with, and you're not playing to those strengths, and you're also not getting the production, how dare you? Because how dare you tell me that you want to win and be a contender, and you're not upholding those principles while also being a super, super behind schedule team defensively? Be strong at something.
Right. No, I think their offense was buoyed by the fact that they had Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on the team, obviously.
100%.
Sure.
I will point out the irony in the chat that we have some people saying they weren't taking enough threes, and we have some people saying that they were taking too many threes. They were 14th in the NBA in 3-point attempts. Everybody wants to take more threes in the league. Like, somebody's going to have to be in the lower half. They were in the upper half. I do think they should have taken more threes, but I do think maybe Devin Booker took too many threes this year with his efficiency. So I'm okay with putting offensive scheme probably near the end of how dare you.
Above Jusuf Nurkic, below chemistry? Or below Jusuf Nurkic?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I think I'm good with that.
I think that's cool.
Let's break things down because the next two are interesting. So at the very top, we have Gerald not asking hard enough questions, followed by defensive effort, rotations, roster fit, and not playing the rooks. That's all your fault. Then going down a tier to how dare you, starting it off with third quarters, then chemistry, offensive scheme, and then Jusuf Nurkic. Part of the problem, turnovers, Devin Booker, Matt Ishbia, injuries, depth, and then did nothing wrong, Jimmy Butler, and the tough schedule. We have 4 left. I'll just read these 4 out for you, especially for you audio listeners who don't know what's coming next. Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, bad luck, and front office moves. Let's start with Kevin Durant.
Again, I'm going to say the same thing about KD that I said about Book. Everybody involved bears some share of the blame. I think KD, out of everybody on the roster, deserves the least share of the blame, but end of part of the problem is probably where I would put him.
I'm really debating between did nothing wrong and part of the problem, because how many games, Steven, did we sit back and we went, man, the only one who showed up tonight was Kevin Durant. Man, the only guy who played on both sides of the ball was Kevin Durant. I really struggle to say that nobody is part of the problem, but I also struggle to look at KD's season where we were saying he could have made all NBA if he finished it out and played 3 more games as part of the problem. I'm really torn.
I mean, dude was he 36, 37?
Yeah.
Dude was top 10 in the MVP race in multiple stretches this season. If it wasn't for games played, bringing him back, he would have been an All-NBA team member again. He was an All-Star again. He was one of the top 10 scorers in the league again. You asked him to shoot more threes. That's not what I do, but cool, I'll do it, and I'll do it at close to 50% over a 2 or 3 week stretch post All-Star break.
Mm-hmm.
What more can you ask for from this dude? You want him to put the ball in the basket. He did that efficiently as he has over the last 3-4 seasons. You want him to be efficient with his passes. Yes, some turnovers came, but when you're getting a certain requisite type of attention from a defense, no one's going to not turn the ball over if you have all of the defensive capital being placed on you. That's inevitably going to happen. Some of the turnovers were on him, but majority of that was because of the attention he saw. I just can't give him blame when we saw the issues that we saw from other players over the course of the season.
Yeah, I think the turnovers, certainly when you're somebody that's in his position, are going to come. But Gerald, there were a couple of nights where I was like, all right, man.
Yeah, and I think someone in the chat said it. That's kind of baked into what he does at this point. Like,
yeah,
if you've watched Kevin Durant throughout his career, he's usually around 3.5 turnovers. Like, it's part of having the ball that much. Some of them are kind of sloppy and avoidable. I don't know, man. I have a hard time. Even I understand how great Kevin Durant was on both ends of the floor. I understand he was the only one for most of the season that we can point to and be like, yeah, he did his job. But this team is 35-45. And Kevin Durant is one of the best players on that team. If you are the leader of a team that has a season go that poorly, I would put him at end of part of the problem.
My rebuttal to it is, okay, yes, KD has the turnovers. We know that's something that is not new to him. He's been that way since he came into the league.
Right.
How often does he make up for said turnovers by getting the ball back defensively, whether that be block shots, whether that be rebounding efforts, whether that be steals, whether that be deflections, whether that be switching effectively and covering up for someone else's mistakes, doing so in an off-script manner? Like, that's the lens that I'm looking at it through. There are ways to make up for mistakes. And I feel like if we're talking about how much of a stake of the blame he gets, it has to be in that bottom tier because of the ways he made up for that. Teams out there throwing him at the 5 because they don't have a 5 that they can viably play, that Bud chooses to play at least. And he's like, okay, I'll do it, and I'll still not, you won't lose any of my offensive production, while also potentially getting even the slightest bit more of an uptick because I'm involved directly in action at the 5 at times. So for those reasons, I just can't give him a piece of the blame. I just can't.
Okay, so I feel like I'm the
You're
deciding
vote.
Oh, man. This is hard because at the end of the day, I agree. He deserves the least amount of blame. Maybe I did myself a disservice by not putting like another option in between part of the problem and did nothing wrong. To me, it feels a little bit more like Kevin Durant is a victim of his circumstances than part of the problem. But you're also right, Gerald, where it's like he was still a part of the team that completely underperformed. I'm going to put him in did nothing wrong. Right. The top of did nothing wrong. And the camera gives out because apparently the camera's mad at me. It's so hard, man, because the next guy that we're talking about is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. This is somebody that, to be quite frank with you, I'm going to be putting in all your fault. You guys can tell me if you disagree. Bradley Beal.
I'm inclined to agree, and I don't want to. It feels weird putting any one player in the all your fault category because, like we've said, this is a shared blame. There's plenty to go around here. But I do think when you couple his injuries, which is something we've talked about, with his play on the court, which, again, the worst net rating of any Suns player, I think they were a minus 9.1 net rating with him on the court. Worst on the team. He was the only player on the team who off the court, when he was off the court, the Suns had a positive net rating. So every player that was on the court was basically a negative, but if you took Bradley Beal out of it, suddenly the Suns were a winning team. That speaks volumes to me. And then you throw his contract on top of that in terms of the lack of flexibility that it gives you, the fact that if you're going to try and trade him, you're probably going to have to attach assets to do it. Or you're going to have to agree to a buyout where he takes lesser money so that you can waive and stretch his contract, at which point he will still be on the books for like 17 million, 20 million, whatever it is a year for the next 5 years. He had played a significant, strong role in what we've seen this season across the board.
This might be the thing that dethrones Gerald.
Oh, no.
What do you think, Steven?
Let's be realistic.
I mean, if you have a big three construct and 1/3 of that big three is not holding up their end of the weight, even if the scenario that they're in is not the most conducive for him to be his best self, that's going to plague the team in terms of their ceiling. It's going to drop their floor significantly to depths that it shouldn't be at. And you're going to have a team that's caught in limbo like they were, especially if you factor in the injuries that we saw, to Gerald's point, and the lack of ability to execute in general. So I don't like the phrasing of all your fault being the top tier when we're putting Beal there, because no one player is solely responsible for why this team did not succeed this season. But in terms of the specific tiering, the phrasing of the tiers, he has to be at the top.
Yeah, we're gonna get a little hyperbolic with these tiers. We're not gonna put this out there though, so don't you guys worry.
Oh no, I'm covering my bases either way.
We're not gonna get ourselves yelled at for that. But I think I'm gonna put him, honestly, I would put him at the top of all your fault, right after Gerald not asking hard enough questions.
Oh, I wouldn't go that high.
I hate this guy, man. Not as a person. I respect him as a person, man. Good for you. Smile through it all. But oh my God, Noah has something to say.
I would put him after roster fit.
I would like to veto you guys and put him above Gerald not asking hard enough questions.
You want him all the way at the top?
Come on now. Let's be realistic.
Yeah, come on. Nobody will dethrone Gerald. Okay, can we...
I'll put him in between like rotations and roster fit. I think that's a compromise between where you want to put him and where Steven had him.
That's okay. We'll put him in between rotations and roster fit. I also think this next one is did nothing wrong. Bad luck.
Yeah, did nothing wrong. I don't even know what that means.
Just this team has bad luck.
Just that they're cursed.
Yeah, they're cursed.
Yeah, I mean that's underlying.
I guess it could be all your fault as well.
It's underlying all your fault, but in terms of this season, did nothing wrong. It's always been there. We know that.
All right, the final one. Front office moves. I know the text is really tiny. I made it while we were live. I'm sorry, everybody. The last one says front office moves. Before we get there, let me give you a rundown of what our tier is like for all you beautiful audio listeners out there. At the top of all your fault, it's Gerald not asking hard enough questions. Then defensive effort, rotations, Bradley Beal, roster fit, not playing the rookies. And how dare you? It goes third quarter, chemistry, offensive scheme, Jusuf Nurkic, part of the problem. Turnovers, Devin Booker, Ishbia, injuries, depth, did nothing wrong, Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, tough schedule, bad luck, and finally, front office moves. Are we looking at yet another all your fault?
Front office moves is just behind me in terms of
this is number 2.
Yeah, this is the big one because. And I even
glad I added it.
I wrote about the Beal trade and the KD trade. I understand the thinking behind those trades. I understood it then. I still even understand it now at that point in time. But the moves themselves have not worked. They have not panned out. They have put this team in a hole, in a very difficult spot where they're basically the only team in the NBA that isn't making the playoffs and doesn't have a lottery pick to show for it. That's a hard place to be in. And this Beal trade, what they're going to have to do to get out of him, either by attaching assets to trade him or by putting long-term salary on the books, by agreeing to a lower buyout and stretching and waiving him, that is detrimental to what you're going to be able to do moving forward. So for me, front office moves are the number one thing aside from me taking accountability, obviously.
Yeah, for me, it's all your fault, and this should trump Gerald's responsibility at all. I would keep that straightforward and be straight shooting with that, because I came into this season, we all said where we thought this team was, what they might need to do to get to where we believe that they could be. And I said they were 2 to 3 moves away. They made one, and that one move was a move to get a bad seed off of the roster more than it was to actually upgrade the context surrounding your big 3-team construct. Mm-hmm. And because they did not execute in that's an overwhelming F. And in terms of the tiering, it's all your fault. It should be the highest of the highs on that.
You know what?
Top of the top.
Let's do it. Let's give Gerald a break. Let's put it at the top.
Oh,
yeah,
you guys.
Gerald, we're gonna
checkmate, Gerald.
You've taken responsibility, and for that we appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna read through these all one more time, and you guys let me know if you want to change anything, if anything doesn't feel right. Okay. At the top of all your fault, we have a new leader. Front office moves. Wow. Dethroning now second place, Gerald not asking tough enough questions. Then defensive effort, rotations, Bradley Beal, roster fit, not playing rooks, all in our most faulty, I was going to say faultless, but that's wrong, category. How dare you? Goes third quarters, chemistry, Offensive scheme, Jusuf Nurkic. Part of the problem, turnovers, Devin Booker, Matt Ishbia, injuries and depth, and did nothing wrong. Kevin Durant, Jimmy Butler, tough schedule, and bad luck.
It's all Gerald's fault.
Espo says it's all Gerald's fault.
I think we should move me to number 1 again, but I respect you guys for
A tie? A tie for number 1.
I can't even allow it. I
tie.
cannot allow it. I refuse.
I refuse.
Put my
Anything
foot
else?
down.
I know Kevin Durant was contentious. Anything else in the how dare you, end of all your fault, part of the problem that we're not feeling comfortable with?
No, I think we're in a good place.
Okay. Steven?
I
And by
like
that,
what I
I mean
see.
we're in the bad place.
We're in the not so good place at all.
Nothing's nice about this.
Yes.
Well, you know what? There is something that's nice, and that's all the psychos and sickos. Still, so many of you in chat need y'all to hit that like button as well on your way out. Guess what, everybody? They're still playing games. We'll be back tomorrow.
Such a threat.
Pre-game, post-game show. Suns, Spurs. Who's going to suck the most? We have another super chat from Mark R. before we get out of here. Says, front office had a lot of sneaky, terrible moves too. Campaign plus a second for cash. The pick swaps with Orlando. They get missed because of Beal, but they were bad.
The Bull, the waving campaign to make room for Bull was one that never made sense to me. But you're right. Some of those have flown under the radar for sure.
Trading your 2031 pick for...
3 lesser picks.
Yep.
It did unlock your draft a little bit more trade
Yeah.
flexibility, but you're right. The value of the pick is not anywhere near what it was.
It made sense at the time, but the execution since has not been there.
Yeah.
Hence it not making much sense now.
Yeah, that was like, oh, they're going to get Jimmy Butler.
Yep.
And then, they...
Nothing.
They didn't get Jimmy Butler. Well, we will be seeing Ryan Dunn put up 15 shots in a quarter tomorrow night. Make sure if you're not watching, you're still tuning into PHNX Suns pregame show, postgame show. Gerald will be down at the arena. It's fan appreciation night. Make sure you show up and get your Bradley Beal bobbleheads. And make sure you follow us on social for some funny stuff about that at PHNX_Suns. Shout out Noah, juggling so many things behind the Mac, making all of the magic happen. It might look simple to you guys, but that job is extremely difficult, especially when we do stuff like this today.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can follow Steven at StevenPG3. That's Steven with a PH because he balances us out. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget and find all of his fantastic writing over on GoPHNX.com. And you can follow me, usually ranting on Twitter, at ERIKRUBY. And remember, you don't have to watch the Suns play basketball, but you do have to watch us. And we'll see you tomorrow.
We all silly like the mayor.